Today we are going to have a look at how we can create a custom pagination view in Laravel 5.3. As you can see, I have a list of records here through which I can paginate using this pagination at the bottom. Either you click on a button next and then a previous obviously, or you can select from the drop-down menu the page you want to navigate to, and that reloads the page with the relevant query string indicating which page you want to go to. Okay, the first thing, if we go back to our editor, you can see I have a fresh installation of Laravel 5.3 already prepared for this course. The one thing that we need to do, if we go back to the browser and navigate to the Laravel documentation, then section for customizing the pagination view, is to run this command here to generate the views, the default views that come with Laravel. So it's going to be PHP artisan vendor :publish _tag equals Laravel pagination. So let's just quickly go back to our terminal. And I'm going to paste it. I'm obviously in the root of my project at the moment. So a PHP artisan vendor :publish _tag equals Laravel pagination. Let's hit return. This will generate all the pagination views, and they will be located under the resources views vendor pagination. So if we try and check this directory, resources views vendor pagination, and these are the default ones that are shipped with the new installation of Laravel 5.3. Okay, the next thing we need to do is to update our .env file. I've already created a database with the name pagination, so make sure that you update the database username, password as well, depending on what sort of environment you run in this project under. I'm using Homestead, so my default username and password is simply Homestead and secret. So if we save and close this file, the next thing I'm going to do is to open the terminal again, and we are going to create the migration first. So I'm going to start with running PHP artisan make and then model, because I'm going to create the model together with the migration at the same time, and I'm going to simply create the model for book. So we're going to have a list of book records, for instance. So book and then -- migration. This will create both the model and the migration. So if we now go back to our editor, if I open database, then migrations, you can see the new migration has been created. And for this books migration, I'm going to have the auto incremental ID, which is going to be our primary key. We keep timestamps, but I'm also going to add the string table, then string, and it's going to be a title of the book. And the other one is also going to be of a string type, so I just duplicate this one, and it's going to be the name of the author. So, and for this exercise, that's all I'm going to use. So it's just the ID, title, author, and then timestamps. Okay, save and close it. Now, if we open our books model, what I'm going to do from within the books model, I know obviously Laravel knows automatically what sort of the table name should be associated with this model, but I tend to specify this anyway. So table equals books. Again, you don't have to do it because obviously Laravel will figure this out based on the model name. And then protected for fillable, I would like title and author to be able to be saved without actually manually associating values with the properties of the model. Okay, so that's our book model. Let's save it and close it. Now what we can do is run our migration. So if we go back to the terminal, I'm already logged into the Homestead and I am within the directory of my project. So what I need to do from here is simply run PHP artisan migrate, and that should create the migration. We could actually remove this users and password. I presume you're working on the existing project. If you're working with the fresh installation of Laravel, you may want to remove this users and password resets table migrations before you run this migration. But this is just a simple exercise, so it doesn't really matter. Let's just create a new controller. And again, we're going to actually use the artisan to do it. So PHP artisan make controller, and the name of the controller is going to be book controller. There we go. So we now have a book controller available to us. Within this book controller, I'm going to create the public function index, which is the action that will return the view displaying the list of records together with the pagination. So books, we're going to start with book, and let's order by them by title. And then we're going to go for paginate, and let's get just 3 records at a time. Then we're going to go for return view, and our view will be book index. So within the directory book, and then index.blade.php file with, and we want to pass books and books. There we go. Now let's import this book model as well here. Up book, that's the one. We can remove these requests, and that's everything within this book controller, so we can save and close it. Now let's create the view. So we go into resources, views, then new directory book, and then we're gonna create a new file called index.blade.php. Okay, let's remove this opening PHP tag from here. And what I'm going to do is open welcome blade.php, and I'm going to copy everything from here, just paste it inside of this index blade for the book module, and let's just remove all this styling. We're going to keep the title, but all this styling here goes, and let's shift it up. You can change the title to whatever you want. I'm just going to keep it the way it is. Now I'm going to link to the style sheet rel. It's going to be style sheet, and then href. It's gonna go to the app.css file. We don't have this file yet, but let's use the Elixir helper here, and we're going to go for css/app.css. Let's close this tag. Then let's actually remove everything from within the body tag. Let's just remove it all. Let's add script tag in the footer as well. So script, and it's going to go to source, and again we're going to use Elixir helper here, and it's going to go to js app.js, because we're going to be using builds later on as well for all these files for CSS and JavaScript. Okay, let's start with the div with the class raw. I'm going to be using Zerp Foundation here for the styling. We'll install in just a moment. You can use obviously Bootstrap or any other styling that you're going to be using, so just format this page whichever way you want. Okay, div class column, and here I'm just going to give some heading h1 books, and then we're gonna go for an unordered list with a class list. And what I'm going to do from here is just use the each directive, and we're going to point to the file which is going to be within the same directory, so book, then partials, and the name of the file is going to be raw.blade.php, so we just need to put raw here. Then we pass in the collection of books. Each instance is going to be represented by the variable book, and if this collection is empty, what view would we want to return? Is going to be books, partials, and then raw-empty. And that's it. Then we need to check if we have any pages. So if books has pages, so if there's more than one page within the pagination, then end if here. This is the only time that we're actually going to display the pagination. So we start with a div class pagination -center, because that's how I want it display on the pagination within in a center. Obviously, you can ignore this tag if you don't. And then just books links, and that's all for our index.blade file. So what we have here is basically our heading. Then we have a loop through the list of records. If there are no books, then we're going to fetch this specific view, and then we check if there's more than one page within this books collection, basically on the pagination instance, and if there is, then we display in the pagination. Okay, so let's create this partial. So first, the new directory within the books book directory is going to be partials, and the first file is going to be called raw.blade.php. Let's remove what we've got here, and then the other one was raw-empty. Let's do the same, raw-empty. Oops, it should be blade as well. Name.blade. There we go. And again, let's remove this PHP tag. Let's go to raw first, and we're going to do the li tag. We start with the strong, and now the variable, if we just look at the index.blade, variable name is going to be a book. So book, and we want title of this book, then BR for a new line, and in between a small tags we're going to put author, colon, and then book author. And that's everything from within this raw blade file. Let's save it and close it. From within the raw empty, we're simply going to do li and display some message. There are currently no records available. Save it and close it. We can save and close our index.blade as well. So that's our views. So now let's update the root web. Let's remove this comment and this closure as well. Let's replace it with a book controller index method. Save it and close it. Now if we preview everything in the browser, I've set up the virtual host pagination.dev for this exercise with Homestead. But as you can see, we have this exception. It tells us the books partials raw empty not found. This is because we have a directory which is called book no books. So let's just go back to our resources views book index, and as you can see here, rather than books, it should be book. Okay, if we save it, go back, refresh the page, and there we go. There are currently no records available. The styling that's currently used here, obviously the CSS styling, is taken from the original installation of Laravel, because it's pointing to public CSS app.css. We're going to update it in just a moment when we download the exercise files. So the next thing we need to do is go back to the database factories, and let's update our model factory for, rather than user, we're going to do it for the book. So let's just replace this one. It's going to have a title, which will be a faker sentence, let's take, and I want, let's say 5 words actually. Not sentences, it's just a sentence. And then we're gonna go for the next one was author. Let's have it just as a name, and we can remove all these other bits here. If you obviously add in one, just make sure that the format stays like this, or whatever else you've added to your model. Okay, so that's our model factory done as well. Next thing, let's just go and get the exercise files and then update our gulp file and so on. Let's re-render the styling. So back to the browser, and together with this video, under the video you have a link to the exercise file, so it's going to take you directly to the repository on GitHub. If you are searching GitHub manually, then just go to github.com/ssd-tutorials, then search for Laravel custom view, which at the moment is just our first repository here. So I'm just going to click on this one, and what we want is just download zip to the desktop. Now file is downloaded. If we just extract it, all we are interested in is this JS and SAS directory. If you have existing CSS files as well as JavaScript files, I'm going to show you what you're actually going to need from these. So I'm going to select both of these, copy them, and then go back to my editor, resources, assets, and I'm going to actually replace everything that I have here within these resources. So I'm just going to remove JS and SAS directories and then paste these new ones in. And I'll show you what we have here. Within the app.js, we only call this plugin, which we'll install in just a moment. So we have this data -ssd-select, which we're going to attach to our pagination element. And then we call this SSD select plugin on it. The only thing that this will do for us is basically when we select the number from within this drop-down menu, it will reload the page. We're changing the argument associated with the parameter of the pagination. That's the only thing that it will do. So we can close this file. Then SAS files, I presume you're going to have your own files already. One thing that you will need is this pagination .scss file, which has basically styling for our pagination. And again, because I'm using foundation, that's why I have these helpers here, breakpoint and so on methods available. Obviously, you probably will have to update it as well, making sure that obviously you have your own breakpoint set accordingly. Okay, so that's what we've got here. The next thing, we have this gulp file. I'm going to replace this current one here with this one, which comes with the exercise file. So I'm just going to delete this file here and just copy the one I've downloaded, paste it within the root of the project as well, and there we go. This one basically only uses Laravel Elixir here. We are compiling this app.scss file from within the assets, this one here, and then for the JavaScript files we're going to have jQuery and this SSD select plugin, as well as this app.js file, which I've mentioned earlier, obviously has this call to this SSD select plugin. And this will be then versioned. That's why we're going to have different builds, and this is exactly why we've used this Elixir helper within our view book index here, so that the latest version is always fetched. Okay, so that's everything for that. Let's now update our package.json file. Now I'm not using Bootstrap, so I'm just going to remove this completely. I'm going to remove the reference to the latest version of jQuery, because this will be automatically installed with the SSD select plugin, so I don't need this separately for this exercise. But obviously, if you are using this, make sure that you keep these files. I don't need this view resource and Lodash either. Let's just save this file now. If we close it, open our terminal, and let's now run npm install to install all these dependencies. I'm going to pause the video for a second while this is installing. So all these dependencies are now installed. I'm going to add a foundation for sites, because that's what I'm using. Obviously, you can ignore this step. So npm foundation install foundation sites, save dev as development dependency, and again I'm going to pause it. And this installed version 6.2.3 of foundation sites, and the next one is going to be npm install ssd select, again save for development. So that's now also installed. We can clear the screen, and now what I'm going to do is run gulp to re-render the files. So gulp, and that should render new CSS and JavaScript files. If we now go back to the browser, and here's our page with the new styling. Okay, let's go back to the terminal. Now I'm going to go back to the homestead, and let's start PHP Artisan Tinker. And what we're going to do from here is add some book records using the model factory. So factory, then we go for app book class. We want 50 records, and let's create them. Hit return. There we go. Now we have records. So Control K to get out of a Tinker, back to the browser, refresh the page, and there we go. Our records are displayed here, but with the default pagination, as you can see, which will work just fine. But we obviously want to change it to a slightly different one. So let's go back to the editor, open our resources directory, then views, vendor pagination. By default, if I just open books, book index blade, when we are calling links method on the pagination instance, the default view is being fetched and displayed. So if we open this default .blade.php file, and let's remove everything that we have here, we're going to start fresh. So we start with the form with the class select pagination. This is where our styling is going to be attached to. And then we're going to check if, and we go for paginator instance that we have available within this view, and we check on first page, which is going to return Boolean true or false based on whether we are or not on the first page. So if we are on the first page, we're going to do something else. We're going to do something else, and then obviously end if. So if we are on the first page, what we want is a back button, because this is the button we're working on now, to be displayed as. We're going to use the span with the class disabled. And for the element to display the label, we're going to have end symbol LA quo. So it's going to be this double arrow going to the left. Otherwise, we want the button, so ahref, and the paginator instance previous page URL method is going to give us the correct URL. Then rel, let's set to pref to indicate that this is the button to go back. And again, let's use the same symbol, LAQUO. So that's our previous button. Then we're going to add another span with the label page. So class pagination page, pagination-page, and then just page label. And then we're going to go for our select element. So select with the data-ssd-select. And the method we want to use from this plugin is going to be go-to. So when you select something from this select menu, go to the URL that's associated with the value attribute of the option tag. Okay, so here we're going to go for each, and we need to generate the range now. Now we're going to use paginator again instance and then get URL range, because this will generate array with page ID, which is a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on obviously how many pages we have, and then associated URL of this ID. So we're going to start with number 1, starting from page 1, and then comma and paginator, and the method last page, which is going to tell us what the last page is, and then this is going to generate this range. And then s page equals URL. And again, let's just go after this one and end for each statement. And within this for each, we're going to check if page, which is the page we're currently looping through, iterating over, equals then paginator current page. So we're comparing whether this is the same page. So if we are on a current page and this page within this select is the page that we're currently viewing, then we're going to make this option selected. But before this, let's just finish this if else statement, else, and then end if. So let's create the option for this one, selected attribute, and then let's just put page number, so page. Otherwise, simply option with the value where we're going to put URL, and then again page number. So that's our select element. Now span again after this select, class pagination off, and then we're going to have off and the number of pages. So paginator, and then last page, which is going to give us the basically number of pages. And then we're going to go for another if statement where we check in the paginator has more pages. If it has more pages, we can display the next button. Else we are going to display just a label and then end if. So if there are more pages, anchor tag with the href paginator and then the method next page URL, and then rel for this one is going to be next, and then the tag we're going to use here is RAQUO. This is going to display these two arrows to the right. And then otherwise span if we want a last page with the class disabled and the same label, so RAQUO. There we go, and that's our pagination done. Let's now save it, preview it in a browser, refresh the page, and obviously I had to misspell something, get URL rage for some strange reason. Okay, let's go back. It's a range that we after, so RANG, there we go, save it, refresh the page, and there you go, our pagination is now displayed. As you can see, we are on the 7th page, 7th option is selected. We can go back, we can go forward, we can select from a drop down that will reload the page and take us to this page. So our pagination is done. Now the last thing we need to do is to write some tests to make sure that obviously it does exactly what it's supposed to. So back to the editor. Let's close all these files, open tests. Actually, before we do this, let's open PHP unit, because we're going to be interacting with the database. Let's overwrite two environment variables. The first one will be db_connection, and we'll set it to SQLite. And then the other one is going to be db_database, which is going to be in memory. So colon memory colon. This is basically going to allow us to run all the queries in memory using the SQLite database. So save it, close it, now open a test case, and what we are going to do here is basically I'm going to add a few helper methods that we're going to use with our pagination. Let's create a few new lines here. Okay, the first one is going to be called URL, so protected function URL, and it will take append argument in case you want to add something to the URL, and we check if is null append. Then what we want is simply return this base URL property. As you can see, base URL simply is storing the protocol with the local host at the end. And otherwise, we're going to return this base URL, and we're going to concatenate it with a /, and then we trim the append argument, so append, and we're going to trim the / in case someone passed the argument, like for instance, say page. We obviously need to remove this / first before we concatenate it with a /. That's why trim on this argument. So that's our URL method. Let's just add some doc blocks here, and it might be a string as well. And then get URL. I think that describes it perfectly. Next method is going to be called URL with query string. So protected function URL with query string, which is when we're going to be able to obviously pass some arguments that we want to add to the query string when we testing with the pagination. And it will take, again, append as first argument, null by default, and then array of query items that we want to add as well. Query, there we go. And we're going to start with path equals rtrim. We want to remove any / from the end of this URL. So this URL, we pass this append argument, and then we want to trim / from the end of it in case there is any. Okay, and then what we're going to do is check if string position path, and we check for the question mark, which would indicate that there is already query string within the URL. Then we return path concatenated with the and symbol rather than question mark this time, and this query string method, which we'll create in just a moment, and we pass this query array as an argument. Otherwise, we're going to return path concatenated with the question mark, and then this query string passing this query array through as an argument. And let's quickly add doc blocks to this method as well. Append might be null or string, and then get URL with the query string. Okay, let's add this query string method as well. And this query string will take this query as an array, and it will return. We're going to use this PHP function http_build_query, and we pass this query as an argument. Obviously, if you're not familiar with this function, please check php.net for documentation. Okay, and doc blocks as well, and we say convert array to query string, and we can now remove all this redundant space here. Save the file. So that's our test case ready. Now let's remove this example test. We don't need this one. We're going to create the new one, and we're going to call it pagination test. So pagination test, and hit return, and it's going to extend our test case. And Now, the first test we are going to do is going to check whether the pagination is going to be hidden when we actually access this page, the book controller. We hit this index action, and whether the pagination is going to be visible when there are not enough records to actually generate it. So basically, we're going to have say 3, because if we open our controller, let's just go back, HTTP controllers, book controller, we've said that we want only 3 records per page. So if we just generate 3 records and then call this root, we'll see if we're going to see the pagination. We shouldn't. So public function hides pagination without sufficient number of records. Let's add the tag, and we are going to start by generating some records using model factory. So factory, let's use app book class. We want 3 records, and let's create them. And while we edit, let's make sure that we actually included the database migration straight as well. Let's just import it here, and then let's just visit our homepage. So visit / obviously you might be having this pagination on any other page. Make sure that the path obviously is correct here, and then we shouldn't see the class that's associated with our form tag. So select -pagination. We shouldn't see it if there's only enough records for 1 page. Okay, save it, back to the terminal. Let's run PHP unit to run the test, and there we go, 1 test, 2 assertions, all of which are passing. Great. Okay, the next test we're going to create, and let me just create a few new lines here again, is going to check whether we get the correct number of pages with links within the pagination. So public function displays correct number of pagination links. Test. And let's just copy what we have in the previous test. Let's amend it slightly. We are going to create 30 records this time, so that should give us 10 pages. Now we visit the same page. This time we should see this string because the pagination should be displayed. Next, we should also see this URL with query string. The page is just a /, and then query string should contain page equals 10, because 10 pages we should get, because obviously we are displaying 3 records per page. 30 divided by 3 should give us 10, so 10 pages should be there, so this link should be visible. And then we should not see, so don't see, and again this URL with query string again, same page, and we shouldn't see URL with a page 11, because obviously there wouldn't be 11 pages when we're dividing 30 by 3. There's only 10 pages. So save it, run a test again, and there we go, 2 tests, 6 assertions, all of which are passing. So that's it in this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Any questions, please use the comment section under this video.